Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Down the Well. I'm your host, Elle Rowley, and I am equal parts excited and nervous about this episode. Truth be told, I wrote it a few months ago, but I've been a little bit too scared to deliver it because I guess there's just a lot of room for misinterpretation or, spin this however you want. But I'm 40 now and we're just going for it. So, okay, I think that most of us would agree that the last 5 years have been some of the most contentious politically, socially, even spiritually in recent history. I don't know about you, but I have felt a deep sadness to feel such contention and polarization. It's never been easier to dehumanize another person because they think differently, especially in our internet silos and echo chambers. It's anxiety-inducing, especially as a mother, to think about where this might end and what the future looks like for our children. Have you felt the tension of the world seep into your home, relationships, or heart? Am I the only one? Have you wondered what you could do to help bring more peace and understanding into the world, but have felt powerless? Does a contentious world have to mean a contentious home? Have you wondered what it means to be a peacemaker in these times? To stay aligned with your integrity and values while also bringing more peace into the world? And is that even possible in these times? These questions have weighed on me as I have felt contention in so many areas of life these past few years. But there is one idea that I keep coming back to that has given me a tremendous amount of hope. It makes me want to take action from a place of optimism and empowerment rather than giving up or turning my back or sticking my head in the sand. If you followed me for a while, you may remember this campaign that I led a few years ago at Solly Baby. It's just one simple phrase: world peace begins at home. Originally, the show was going to be called World Peace Begins at Home because the first time I read this phrase years ago on a vintage t-shirt that I bought, I was a young mother of 3 in the throes of many of the mundane tasks of motherhood and growing a business. I felt so deeply moved and validated and inspired by these simple 5 words. What I was doing mattered. It still matters. The quiet, constant sacrifices I was making mattered. I made it my personal mantra, and years later, I recreated that t-shirt for Solly Baby to support our Mother Center in Guatemala through Humble Village. It's been my intention that everything from my motherhood to my work at Solly Baby to my message here leads back to this one deeply held belief that the more peace there is in our homes, the more peace there will be in the world. So I resurrected this t-shirt. We'll talk more about that later. It speaks to the power of motherhood that so often has been forgotten and neglected and degraded. The power that mothers have to shape the next generation. The power of having the hands that rock the cradles. Is that not our strength? Our children are the next generation of political and spiritual leaders and business owners and teachers and neighbors and friends. Maybe we can't solve for the world's problems right now, but we can teach peace in our homes. We can work to keep the contention of the world out of our homes. And most importantly, we can cultivate more inner peace that most surely creates theirs. Of course, we're not going to do it perfectly, and that doesn't mean we don't do work outside of our homes that we feel called to do to influence peace in the world. But let's not let the world determine the level of peace in our homes and hearts. Let's not be at the affect of every news headline or every election. Do those things impact us? Yes. Should we care? Yes. Should we put our heads in the sand? Of course not. But let's fortify ourselves so we can respond from a place of empowerment to our children rather than instilling more fear or hate or chaos. Obviously, everyone is responsible for their own behavior, and it's not on all the moms to solve the world's problems. But the reality is that we have the most power if we use it in shaping the next generation, or in other words, the future. Let's use our influence to proactively put more peace into the world. I want to explore 3 key ways that we can live this mantra: world peace begins at home. 1, teaching peace. 2, safeguarding our homes. 3, cultivating inner peace. Let's first talk about teaching peace. Conflict is not synonymous with contention. Let me say that again. Conflict is not synonymous with contention. I learned this idea from Patrick Mason, an international peace studies professor that I heard speak a few years ago. Conflict does not have to equal contention. We do not need to conflate the two. Brené Brown helped us make the distinction between guilt and shame. Let's do the same with conflict and contention. We can have conflict without having contention. We have forgotten how to disagree in our society. Disagreement and conflict are necessary and healthy, especially in our country and especially in families. Our ideas or ways of approaching the world can conflict, but there's no reason that needs to lead to contention. When we're emotional adults, we should know how to respectfully disagree, and we can model that for our children. And when we don't, because of course we won't always, we can apologize and point out where we moved from conflict to contention in the interaction. Of course, I'm still learning this myself and how to better model it. I keep having this story come back to my mind from a time years ago when my husband was a part of a small research team for former U.S. Senator Bob Bennett in Utah to help on a book that he was writing. Senator Bennett was a Republican from Utah, and at this time, he'd just been voted out during President Obama's administration. And while President Obama was not Senator Bennett's direct political foe, they were ideologically opposed to each other on most issues. So one day in a research meeting, one of the other interns asked a question about President Obama, simply referring to him as Obama. The usually very congenial Senator Bennett quickly corrected him. It's President Obama. You may not agree with him, but you still respect the office. It said something along those lines. And my husband never forgot it, and I've never forgotten it either. I think this little exchange exemplifies what we're missing. Don't take that as some big political thing that I'm saying here. It's just the principle behind it. We can disagree with people, but still show respect for them as human beings. How are we talking about people we don't agree with? Can we disagree without dehumanizing them? I am embarrassed to say how easy it is for me to slip into that. What storybooks or biographies of spiritual or political leaders can we read to our kids who exemplify this idea of conflict without contention? How can we teach our kids about healthy conflict resolution? When they're arguing with each other or when they have a disagreement at school or with friends, these are the best teaching moments. This is how we're putting more peace into the world, is by utilizing those teaching moments. Unfortunately, these are not always tools that we have ourselves, though, so it may take us doing some homework on our own. Mason also suggests the use of curiosity in peacemaking. One of the most useful tools I learned in my experience as a life coach is the power of curiosity, especially with clients who are stuck in judgment of themselves or someone else. Curiosity just feels so much better than judgment. When we're in judgment, we're closed. There is no path forward. It's just a standoff with a winner and a loser, really two losers. But when we are curious, our hearts stay open and we can be problem solvers moving forward together if the other person chooses to do so, right? Curiosity opens us up to creativity, which is needed in problem solving. We're profoundly lacking in curiosity right now. It is easy to be set in our ways and to feel so threatened by positions that are in conflict with our own that we feel pushed to absolute certainty. I'm embarrassed to say how quickly I've gone to judgment or certainty when I feel like my ideas are being threatened. I just cut off my connection to curiosity, and then everything else goes downhill from there. Whether it's in a, conversation with one of my kids or with a stranger or with the newspaper, right? Let's teach our kids to stay curious about the people that they disagree with, whether it's on the playground or with a sibling. Leading questions like, can you think of any other reasons why they might have done that? Or I wonder if, or don't you think it's interesting that this one tool can help tremendously in keeping conflicts from becoming contentious, or just simply help to de-escalate contentious conversations? I'm definitely not saying to compromise your values or that it means we need to be curious about ideas that we've already wrestled with and see as incongruent with our values. But if we can stay curious about the person who is presenting us with those ideas, we're going to have a much more productive conversation and we're going to respect them more in the process. Okay, so we can teach peace by creating a distinction between conflict and contention, teaching conflict resolution through stories and people, and especially modeling it in our relationships. But how can we safeguard our homes from the contention of the world? I am obsessed with this idea. This is where I really think that we let the world in without realizing it. We need to watch our words and watch what we allow into our homes. Remember that you and your partner are the creators and curators of your home, and you have the authority to regulate what comes in. I know I'm going to sound like an old granny here, but you also know I love old grannies, so I'm going to say it anyways. The media that we allow in our homes profoundly impacts the feeling in our homes. I think we could all do with less tech everywhere, but especially in our homes, and far less media. If Jonathan Haidt's books, The Anxious Generation, Coddling of the American Mind, have not convinced us all yet, I don't know what will. There are so many reasons to limit our kids on screens and to completely keep them off of social media. Shout out to all of my mom friends of teens who have no social media. Thank you. But I think just the gross feeling of a show being on for too long in a house is reason enough. You know that vibe in a house where everything just starts to feel stagnant and slothful, right? It just feels icky. Turn it off, filter it. I'm talking to myself here too, okay, guys? We have to be willing to sacrifice the peace in the moment with our kids for the greater peace of our homes and our kids' futures. We have to be willing to be unliked by our kids sometimes, knowing that ultimately we will be respected. Take it away, put it away, unplug the internet, okay? My mother-in-law, who is the kindest, most patient woman I've ever known, once, this is like the famous Rowley story, once smashed a Nintendo, I want to say, with a hammer because her boys would not stop fighting over it. That is like so not her. They forgave her, but they also never forgot it. It was like, a teaching lesson. I'm not saying we should go smashing things, but my husband and I both really like following politics and current events. What my husband studied in college, but we noticed a major increase in our stress levels from watching the news. Really didn't even matter the news source, though some are obviously worse than others. So I teleported back to 1950, that's right, and I could not be happier about it. Yep, we subscribed to the newspaper. We decided to stop watching the news on our phones and computers, and instead we get the bulk of our news from the newspaper. This has been life-changing. I still like independent journalists, Substack, some news channels, right? But getting the big headline news from a few trusted sources each week on paper has been a completely different experience in my nervous system. Okay, I know this sounds crazy. I'm like harping on this so much, but it has really been the coolest thing in our family the last few months. And my kids like reading it too. It's been surprising. My 8 and 11-year-old were all in on the review of Snow White. They're every paper, they find articles that they're interested in. This all sounds dramatic, but after reading a few studies about why this might be, I found that I was not actually being dramatic at all. This is a life-changing shift and a much, much healthier one. The University of Sussex found that screen-based media activates the sympathetic nervous system of fight or flight. Said that television news delivers fear-based imagery directly to the viewer's limbic system, where it triggers an immediate stress response. A Princeton University study in 2014 found that the tactile interaction with paper provides spatial stability and calms the body's cognitive environment. Aren't we all looking for a little more calm in our cognitive environment? You guys, it actually activates the parasympathetic nervous system to hold a newspaper. The exact opposite response to watching the news on a screen. That's hilarious. Okay, a meta-analysis from Norwegian Reading Center in 2019. Do you like that I'm still talking about the newspaper? I can't stop it. Showed that reading on paper leads to better comprehension, lower cognitive load, and less mental fatigue than digital screens. It goes on and on. Okay, psychological stress, cycle of clicking between headlines creates an addictive loop that mimics reward-based stimulation, dopamine hits, which over time leads to nervous system dysregulation. Okay, not a Newsy affiliate or something here, but screens and tech are the undeniably most pervasive and insidious way that most of us are letting contention into our homes from the world. And I think it's time for a check-in for many of us and to up-level our filter. Beyond keeping media out, there are infinite ways that we can proactively create peace in our homes. But I'll just offer 2 quick ideas, okay? One, I deeply believe that family dinner around the table is the most underrated and most effective place to connect and learn to disagree. Michael Pollan famously said, "The family meal is the nursery of democracy." It's where we teach our children the manners they need to get along in society. We teach them how to share, to take turns, to argue without fighting with people. They learn the art of adult conversation. I get it. We're all too busy. Kids are busy. Work is busy. It's hard. I'm with you. My goal is 3 nights a week around the dinner table. It's like bare minimum. If we are not consistently doing that, which is not even half of the time, it's time to reconvene and make some changes as a family. When I asked my kids, I thought this was really interesting. When I asked my kids in preparation for this episode, what are the things that make our home feel the most peaceful? Every single one of them, all 4 independently said family dinner. I was like, are you kidding? Of all the things that we do, it's just amazing to me that that was the thing that they recognized as bringing peace into our home. Secondly, creating little rituals around the major transitions of our day, like the morning wake up, drop-offs, pickups, and bedtime. So have the power to create little moments of peace and connection that make a big difference. It's all the little things that really build up to the big things, right? I know we're all already doing this on some level, saying, I love you before we leave, things like that. But up-leveling those little touch points where we are naturally intersecting throughout the day and making them real connection points has the power to cultivate so much more peace in our families. I have experienced this so many times over the years. It's easy to feel tempted to do big things to bring our families together, like big vacations or picking up a new hobby or setting a big goal together, like going off sugar for a year, LOL. But I have had many sage women give me this advice of being there for the transitions and really checking in. It could be like 5 seconds, 10 seconds, but it makes a difference. Those touch points will look different in every home. I've had a lot of other responsibilities while raising 4 kids, and I've not always been there for every wake up or pickup, but choosing a few to be consistent and intentional with has brought so much peace in this ADHD routine resistant home. It will look different depending on the age and personality of your kids. Just taking a moment to make eye contact, smile at them, that's literally half of the ritual. I heard this quote long before I had kids, but I've never forgotten it. When my son was young, I used to think he was the most beautiful person I'd ever seen. And when I looked at him, I saw his light. I saw his smile and I saw his soul. I reflected back to him his light, and I still do. She goes on, let your face speak what's in your heart. When your child walks into the room, does your face light up? That's what they're looking for. Her words struck me to the core. Is this what our kids feel from us? So often what reads on our face is just like the last conversation we had. What just happened earlier in the day, what's about to happen. Can we just make those touch points, those intersection, transitions of the day? Can we just be present in those moments just for, a minute or two to really connect with them, really let them know how happy we are to see them? I am really working on doing this one more conscientiously with my kids. We can also hug them, express love, offer a snack, just not be on our phone, ask a thoughtful question about their day, not just how was your day, tell them you're happy to see them. And again, getting off our phones. I'm so guilty of this. Turn down the music, read a book together, pray, read a verse or poem of whatever your family considers to be sacred text. Just stop for one moment and let them know that you see them. We're not going to remember to do that all day long, but if we can just do it in those small moments, just that habit stacking, just a few times a day, think of the cumulative effect of that. We can't control everyone and everything in our homes, nor should we, but let's leverage the areas where we can heavily influence the environment and spirit in our homes. Let's make our homes more of a refuge and escape from the noise and the stress of the world for ourselves and for our families. Okay, number 3, cultivating inner peace. This is easily the most important way to bring peace into the world and in our homes, but also the hardest. If we want the world to be kinder, though, we need to be more kind. If we want the world to be more honest, we need to be more honest. If we want the world to be less judgmental, we need to be less judgmental, right? So it follows that if we want the world to be more peaceful, we need to be more peaceful. Dr. Becky, one of my favorite parenting coaches, said, your inner peace is their inner peace. Your nervous system is their nervous system co-regulating. Why are we surprised when our kids are not peaceful when we aren't? Is it a mystery when we are dysregulated and find dysregulation in our kids emotionally? But are we ever going to be perfectly peaceful? Are we responsible for all of their dysregulation? Of course not. Life happens to all of us, and we need that dysregulation to learn how to, right? We need the contrast. It's how we learn. And we're not immune to the human experience just because we're adults. But let's remember that we are the adults and we have a different responsibility than our kids. It's often why our most intense moments as parents are made dramatically worse by kids who then start crying because they feel our stress. When I was teaching caregivers to use the Rapid Solly baby, I would always remind them that if they were stressed while wearing their baby, the baby would feel it and be stressed as well. They pick up on the smallest cues from us. Our breathing regulates their breathing. Our heartbeat regulates theirs. Our nervous system regulates theirs. In fact, our body temperature regulates their body temperature. They pick up on everything, and those signals tell them if they're safe or not. So I would encourage baby wearers to use their babies as a reminder to take care of themselves, to breathe deeply, to stay calm. It's a win-win, right? But as they grow, it's easy to forget that there are these invisible strings or frequency wires that still connect us, and we're teaching them, whether we want to or not, how to respond to the world. I hope we can use that as the best motivation to take care of ourselves rather than guilt or to seek perfection. Ultimately, as the Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, I think I said that kind of right, said, if we are not peaceful, we cannot share peace. How can we cultivate more inner peace? That's an impossibly big question that looks different for every person. I couldn't begin to broach every possible reason that our inner peace is disturbed or yours is, but I think it's probably first starts with accepting that we're going to be disturbed over and over again. I see that actually like cross philosophies, that is often the first step is accepting that we are going to be disturbed. So what is the thing that will carry us through those disturbances in life? Do you have a foundation that can offer deep, abiding peace that carries you through those disturbances? How can we create an underlying bedrock of peace to sustain us and handle the stressors of life? If you don't have that, I hope that you'll seek it or seek more of it, whether that's a trusted therapist, coach, or spiritual leader, or just a really good friend. If you don't have a religious faith or spiritual practice that brings you peace, I hope you'll search for it or dive more deeply into your current faith or practice. If it doesn't bring you inner peace, I hope you'll find one that does. I have to add that some of the least peaceful times in my life have been the result of having relationships that needed reconciling, whether it was forgiveness that I needed to ask for or to extend to someone else. It's easy to justify those little discords in our lives as a part of life or to tell ourselves that they don't really bother us or it's in the past. But I can't tell you the weight that I didn't even know was there that's been lifted over and over when I've reconciled a relationship or done what I can on my side of the street, right? No matter how small or seemingly distant the relationship, I am just convinced that our kids will remember the peacemaking that we made or did not make more than any book we read to them. There's a well-known story of a person who came to Calcutta hoping to join Mother Teresa's work, eager to serve the poor and the sick. But instead of welcoming them into the mission, she told them to go home and serve in their own community, especially their own family. The rough quote is, "Stay where you are. Find your own Calcutta. Find the sick, the suffering, and the lonely right there where you are, in your own homes and in your own families, in your workplaces and in your schools. You can find Calcutta all over the world if you have the eyes to see." She said, love begins at home, and it's not about how much we do, but how much love we put into the action that we do. If you want to bring happiness to the whole world, go home and love your family. One of the greatest humanitarians of all time is telling us loud and clear, world peace begins at home. Let's use these hearts and hands that are rocking the cradles to raise a curious generation of peacemakers, strong in their convictions, but with the skills to have conflict without contention. And let's model it for them by cultivating more of our own inner peace. Speaking of world peace beginning at home, I had these shirts made that if you can't see them on the podcast, I will be linking on in the show notes and on social media. But these shirts I had made to spread this message of world peace begins at home. I have it in this colorway and this one. And this. So I have this blue and really cute creamy brown and this light cream. And they are all to help spread this message, to remind you of the power and influence you have in your home and in the world, and to support our mothers centers in Guatemala. They're in the Alta Verapaz region of Guatemala, in the Mayan areas up in the mountains. And we work through this Humble Village Project, which is a nonprofit that serves the most severely malnourished pregnant and nursing mothers and infants, and one of the most vulnerable and malnourished populations in the world. This organization has saved thousands of babies and mothers literally starving to death. I get the before and after. I've worked with them for the last 6 years, and I've had so many before and after photos of the babies that they've been able to save. I've been there 3 times and have seen the work that is being done there firsthand, and it is life-saving and life-giving. 100% of the proceeds of these shirts will go to this project, and it's super cute, right? It's embroidered. This isn't screen printed. I had them embroidered. I don't know why I'm so into embroidering, but I am. So that's what I call a twofer. I would absolutely love to hear your ideas for cultivating peace in your homes in the comments. You can also find the link for these t-shirts in the comments. And I know so many other mothers will want to hear your ideas, whatever stage of life you're in. So please share your ideas below. I'd also be so grateful if you would stop to like, subscribe, review the show. It really helps get the word out and helps me not feel like I'm just talking to myself in an old barn. But let's be honest, I am. Okay, until next time, bye-bye.